Welcome to this session. We'll begin with Uriah. And these are some questions that we came up with last evening. And again, we're going to focus very much on concrete issues, concrete solutions. And so I'm going to ask each of you, and of course this may not be the best, you may have been on the receiving end of this, but what tools have you developed to teach and inspire compassion in youth, in the organizations that you're involved with?
I think a lot of the youth organizations or groups who focus on different things that are happening in the world have really helped me to become compassionate, because instead of focusing on one thing that's happening, you get a view on multiple things that are happening, and then you can figure out ways that they're similar and ways they're different, so you can find new ways to approach the situation. Really, I think it is just be yourself and do what you feels right and not what other people want you to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, I suppose the latest tool that I've created or helped create with the work of many people now is what you mentioned earlier. It's called a Genesis Covenant. You can go online, and I won't try, and I don't have enough time to explain everything. You can go online, genesiscovenant.org, but I'll give it to you in a nutshell. I believe very strongly that the time for action has come. We've talked enough. I believe the time has come for us, all of us who are people of faith, of whatever religious conviction you may be. Time is running out for us to save this planet from destruction. Global warming and climate change is going to leave us with an inheritance for our children that is a crime if we let it happen. And it's up to us to take that leadership to show compassion to the earth. As a native person, compassion is not something we just show to other human beings. It's something that we live in the midst of in the natural world that God created. And so what I want to do is challenge every person of every faith group that's here today to work through the Genesis Covenant Project in your own faith community to make your national organization or association, or however you describe yourselves, to take a pledge, a covenant, a sacred promise for Genesis, life, a new beginning, that you will reduce your impact as a national religious body, your carbon footprint, your energy consumption, your greenhouse gas emissions, by a minimum of 50% within the next 10 years.
The tools that I have adopted are the tools of the mother. When one could learn the art of communication between the mother and the child, the mother brings herself down and humbles herself to appear as if she is equal to the baby, to the child, and speaks to the child not in a matured language, but in a childish expression. And so she is able to captivate the attention of the baby. And most of the time, the best means of communication is smile. According to the Holy Prophet Muhammad of Islam, peace be upon him, he said, a smile on the face of a human being is a way of worship, is a charity. I consider each and every one that I meet very, very, very important person to me, as equally as I would meet his spiritual eminence, the Honorable Archbishop Desmond Tutu. I give them the attention and respect, and I receive the respect in turn. I have also developed an art of communicating with people who are downtrodden, who are rejected, in the society. For instance, those who are accused or allegedly considered criminals or have been accused of one crime or the other, but yet have to face any court date. When I meet them, even be they robbers or any other people, I tell them what is wrong with you, and they tell me what has happened. I say, well, it's not your fault. It's the society, it's the condition, it's the circumstances. And then I bring myself also to extrapolate the image of Jesus the Christ, the way he spoke. Jesus was a man who extrapolated immense and profound compassion. And likewise the prophet, likewise Moses, I learned those arts. Just like if you want to get the best woman that you so much love, how best would you like to say? What do you want to say to her? You want to use the best language that is attractive to her heart, not the language that you want. So you would like to say to her, for instance, if you ever change your mind. Now she will say, wow, I never know I'm that important.
Thank you very much.
I can attest to the honesty of Shah Hamad because he's been calling me Your Highness since yesterday. And his honey bunch as well. Friends, I want to put my first hat on as a member of the Baha'i faith. One of the tools that the Baha'i world community uses to help awaken the innate compassion that is in every child ever born is a year of service. When they are in their early teens to late teens, they choose a part of the world and they go there to serve. And with my other hat, as founder of the Virtues Project, in traveling the world, what I have seen is that as we work with many, many faith communities, that even the most troubled and wounded child has a heart of compassion that can be awakened by witnessing the suffering of others. This has been tried in the United States in many schools, inner city schools, when you realize that others need you and that you actually can make a difference. That virtue that is so much emerging as a child moves into the preteens and the teens, which is idealism. Who am I in this world? What is my mark going to be? How do I make a difference? What we have found is that even children that are labeled as bullies can become leaders. Once we say to them, you must find your way of using that power that you have to help other people and lead with integrity. And once you do that, you leave your bullying days behind. Because under that anger is a longing for justice and a need for control. And you'll find that a lot of these very controlling children, once you say to them, you know, you have a lot of power with other kids, don't you? Yep. Well, if you wrap that power around service, you will be a leader of your community and you'll be a leader in this school. And the strategies of the Virtues Project, starting with the language of virtues, is a tool that's used by many, many diverse education communities and faith communities. And we have been speaking that language from the beginning of this conference because the one thread of unity amongst all of us, of every faith, and people who have no particular belief system other than, I want to be a good person, we all believe in courage, honor, justice. That is the unifying essence of who we are. So if we use that language with children, and I'd love to give this audience and whoever's watching some homework for the rest of your life, that you sacrifice, that you give up any words that shame you or anyone else. Those words that some of us heard when we were growing up, stupid, mean, bully, confused, shy, that we drop the labels. And instead, when we see a 2-year-old come over and put their hand on someone's arm because they're crying, that we honor that compassion honey, that was so compassionate of you. And that when they are in a place of violence, that first of all, we hear what needs to be heard. We companion them, and then we call them to their peacefulness. So instead of labeling them as bullies, we call them to their innate peacefulness. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that this notion of labeling is really the beginning of violence, isn't it?
Yes.
As soon as you try to categorize somebody as something, then the violence has begun. Thank you very much for sharing that. Bishop Tutu.
I don't have any formulas, but I wanted to tell you about our recent visit to Darfur, where all that you have heard about the awfulness there really pales in the reality of the ghastliness in that situation. And to speak about just two things, it was quite extraordinary. In that desolate, awful place, to see people laughing. I mean, the incredible resilience of people, the mothers who lived in those shelters made out of sand, keeping out neither heat nor cold. And you wondered how family life could be possible in such circumstances. And yet you're speaking to a group of all of these people, so-called displaced persons, and they had it in them to laugh. And then the men, mostly Muslims in their white costumes, spotless. You just said, how in this place which has no water could they be as they are? But that's not in fact what I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to say, one of the things that amazed me, I mean, one was obviously overwhelmed by the ghastliness, the awfulness, the squalor and the degradation and the insecurity. But it was how one was so taken by the humanitarian workers. People, many of them coming from quite affluent homes, people who could have lived quite comfortably, going to that place where, especially for women, it's increasingly dangerous. You are abducted, and the best is being violated, the worst being killed. And you asked, how many terms have you served here? And the amazing thing was that quite a number of them kept returning. And you sat there and you said, how God must be pleased. That what moves them? Compassion. Compassion. I don't know how they evoked that compassion, but I would ask, with your permission, just for us to clap those humanitarian work.
Like the Archbishop, I don't have any magic wand to wave where all of the problems could disappear. But just two things. First, we need to be able to put a human face on every person. In other words, see them as people and as individuals. And then secondly, I've been taught that one of the marks of a leader is to deprive people of their excuses, so they can't say what they can't do and what they won't do. The first part, and you will have to forgive me, putting a face on people and on situations, you have difficulty hating someone you know. But then when the media and others tell you that this is our enemy, these are the folks we should not like, it's easier to turn hate and venom toward what you don't know. Let me give you an example. And I know we're in a political season, and forgive me. I'm not going to tell you who I'm voting for, but you can guess. But when that candidate's pastor, and I'm not going where you think I'm going either, but when that candidate's pastor had some of his words taken out of context, people vilified the man, and I was in the circle of people I thought I knew. I said, "Do you know him?" "No," but he shouldn't have said that. Then they asked me, "Do you know him?" I said, "Yes, I do." "Well, how do you know him?" I said, "He's preached at our church. I preached at his church. He did my younger daughter's wedding. She works for him. He's a part of our family." Oh. See, when you put a face on another person and see them as a human being, you won't be like those two religious leaders on the Damascus road who left somebody in the ditch, and somebody who was not of his race, clan, saw not a Jew, but he saw a human being on the ground and stopped and helped him. Now that's when you show compassion. So we can't be taken in by the media, although we need to use them, convert them, in my tradition, baptize them, maybe hold them underwater a little longer. Then they will be better. The other is that as human beings, and we are not angels, what we don't want to do, we will try to conjure up reasons not to do it. I learned compassion from my parents. My mother was very compassionate, but she would always relieve me of any excuse. I can't do this because of that. Well, that no longer exists. Just go down the line, so you'll finally have to say, well, all right, you go ahead and do it. We need to be able to relieve people of their excuses why they cannot be compassionate.
In our little community in Minneapolis, we're trying to do that. We think that to use face-to-face introduction and friendship are the best tools that we have. And we know that we live in an environment in which we're the most educated people in the history of humankind. We know about a lot of people. But sometimes knowing about someone could prevent you from actually knowing that person. And so we have tried to figure out systems and ways to organize our community so that we meet face to face and we begin and end with friendship. And so we design our community so that it meets in the round. We design our community so that you're forced to get up and talk to each other. We know that we have to use systems of power and structure because communities do that, but we can name those each time. And we can say that ultimately all the structure that we put together, especially to our younger people, is just our weak best attempts at one moment to try to make sense of this. And let's be sure that through it all we know each other and that we're friends. And I come from a Jesus-following tradition where Jesus said, I don't call you servants, but I call you friend. And so we've said to all the people in our community, if we've ended up anywhere else at the end of the day than as friends, then something's gone terribly wrong.
I was identified as both Associate Commissioner of Education for New York State and as the Reverend Sheila Evans Trainum. And I remember in my interview to be the Associate Commissioner of Education, the last question asked of me was, is there anything else do you think we should know about you before this interview ends? And I said, well, yes, I think you should know that I am an ordained minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. There were two gentlemen in the room at that time, and one of them said, well, don't you think that will interfere with your ability to do the job that you need to do for us in the state of New York? And I said, what I do in the mornings and what I do at night and what I do on Saturdays and Sundays will give me the strength to do what I need to do for you Monday to Friday from 9 to 5. And when I walked out of the room, the commissioner at that time said, I don't need to look any further. I've found my woman. And I think working in both capacities has enabled me to kind of bridge the gap between church and state, between what we do in our faith community and what we're able to do in the schools of New York State. And one example that I'd like to bring to light today is our rites of passage programs for our young people. If you know anything about the Black church, you know that rites of passage becomes very important because it speaks to who we are culturally, helps us to identify our past, because if you don't know your past, you don't know where you're going, you don't know your future. So if we are to raise children who understand that there is a tremendous future ahead of them, then we also have to teach them the tremendous history of their people, not just dating back to slavery in America, but dating back to the glory of Africa. And so in our churches, we have rites of passages programs, particularly in our urban centers, to teach our young people what it means to enter into adulthood. What are the responsibilities? How do you walk the walk that Jesus talked about and that he walked himself? And how do you then give back in a compassionate way to your community, your family, your friends, and to the world? We were able then to take those rites of passages programs for our teenagers in our churches and move those into the public schools of New York City, where many of our schools now have rites of passages programs for young women and young men who need to understand that despite what they see on television, despite what they see in their communities, despite what the statistics say about where they might be going, because the reality is in this country, we judge the number of prison cells we need to build in every state in this nation based upon the academic performance of Black and Hispanic males in the 4th grade. So despite the fact that they are a part of a statistic that says in the 4th grade, I'm building a prison cell for you, because if I build them, you will come. And if you don't come on your own, I will change the laws so that our prisons are populated. We have to teach them that despite that, despite the statistics, we teach them how to grow to be young men and young women, responsible men, responsible women, giving back in a compassionate way to a world that has not been so compassionate in their thinking about their future. And as the Associate Commissioner, I've had to carry the message without a cross, without a collar, without a crown, but with compassion in my heart.
I was on an interfaith television program here on Colma in Seattle for 14 years. After 6 years, the rabbi, who was my partner, asked me one morning if I would drive to Mount Vernon, north of here, to buy a farm. I said, "You're not interested in farming." He said, "Get into the car and I'll explain it." On the way up to Mount Vernon, he said, "You grew up in a ghetto in Ireland. I grew up in a ghetto in Russia. Our young people today in our churches are living in ghettos. They don't know each other. I want to buy this farm and try to bring them together. I give the churches a different piece of land, property, on this farm, to put up their own building, run their own programs, but have some dialogue and exchange between them so that when they go out into the world, they will know each other. They won't be strangers." I said, "Great, Rabbi, I'm with you 100%. So to help with some friends, we bought 200 acres. And then I went around as a representative to the heads of the different churches, say, "Hey, would you like some free land? Put up a building and take part in this program?" They all smiled and said, "It was a great idea, but we can't expand it this time." So it looked like our dream was coming to an end. When the wife of the rabbi met a professor here at the University of Washington and told him her story. Well, he said, "We've got to get a building on that property. We have to try and get the young people up there." So he asked the seniors in architecture here at the University of Washington if they would design a building, a lodge for young people, put it up, and he would grade them on it. 14 of them, between January and June of 1968, designed and erected a lodge for 72 young people at the property we bought. And we were in business. With young people coming since, but not under the conditions we hoped for at the beginning. But I want you to know that after 40 years, this summer we have a weekend when we're having young people from about 12 different churches, those who graduated from the 8th grade, coming together with a psychologist to see how they can, first of all, get to know each other, and then perhaps from the different towns they come from, do something for their communities together. So that's where we are, what we're trying to do for young people.
Very inspiring. Thank you so much.
Wow, yeah, I feel honored to be in the presence of all of such wonderful people doing such wonderful things. And I wanted to answer the original question about which tools have you developed to teach and inspire compassion to youth. And the tool that I've seen that's most effective is showing people that you care. Taking a step maybe out of your comfort zone and taking interest in somebody else and letting them know that they are important and that you value their thoughts and their ideas. And that is proven over time and time again. I watched volunteers in this homework center that I volunteer at just take a few minutes out of their day at the beginning of the class or at the end of the class to talk to the students and say, "What's happening in your life?" And just that 5-minute interaction has a huge, I can't even explain how large the effect is on these students' performance. Just knowing that somebody is there and cares about them is such a large motivator that I think that's the greatest tool that anyone has. Everyone in this room has the capacity to make that change happen. And so that's the all-giving tool.
The word compassion seems to have, especially in today's world, a particularly, and maybe in the context of this meeting, given our honored guest this morning, absolutely central to the Buddhist tradition, compassion. So my question is, how does your particular faith community connect compassion, not in a vague way, but to the very essence of what your spiritual tradition, if you adhere to one on this panel, is?
One thing that connects my faith community, I'm a part of the Japanese Presbyterian community in the central area of Seattle. One thing that we do is it's a homeless feeding program. And so it takes what we talk about in our worship and talk about in our programs about reaching out, and it's a direct manifestation of what we do in our worship. And it's just taking everything that you have and bringing it to the homeless community of Seattle and bringing it to the streets and bringing it to where it matters. And it's such a powerful experience to watch all these people from all walks of life come down and to meet with these homeless people and have an exchange and have a discussion, because it's not just about feeding them, it's about talking to them and sharing their experiences and gaining some wisdom.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Excellent.
Well, how does my faith community as a Roman Catholic try to address compassion? Well, I'm going to give you statistics. We have a school system that's very effective in this field. Next to the state, we have the biggest social service department in the state of Washington. We have about 6 large hospitals, so on and so on. But I'd like to tell you about a program, though, that I was involved in that put an ad in 16 major newspapers in the state of Washington for 30 years. If businesses can advertise what they have to offer, we as religious people, as a part of that dialogue and compassion to help one another, should be willing to put ads explaining where we are, what we stand for, what our goals are in life.
In our church, the question always comes around, what ministry are you involved in? It's not just the ministry of coming to church, but in addition to that, what else are you involved in that will show your connection to the ministry of Jesus? Are you feeding the poor? Are you visiting those that are in jail? Are you working with the least of them? And so in developing as a Christian, I had to make a decision as to what my ministries would be and how would I give my gifts and my time and my talent. And I decided more than 35 years ago that I would spend my time helping children. I like adults. I even like old people. I'm going to get old one day, older than I am today. But I really felt that if I was to have a truly compassionate heart matched with the gifts and talents that God had given me, then I would focus my life's work on working with children in whatever capacity. So whether it was within education, and I view education as a ministry, or if it was working with particular populations of children, homeless children. I'm the state homeless director for children in education in New York State, or migrant children who very often have to work with their families in the field, and I knew we could do something to give them stipends to go to school in the summer rather than working in the field so that they get ahead, because education is still the key that opens the door to advances in this place called America. We can do something about putting children in institutions. We can do something about helping families to hold tight and to hang on when the difficulties come. We could do something about the young woman who has a child who has never completed the nurturing process herself. We can teach her how to be a mother, even though she did not have someone to mother her. We can do something about that. We can unite as a family of humanitarian efforts, to say we are not going to lose any child. I believe that when I ultimately finish with my 9-to-5 job, I'm going to start a new party. Not a Republican party or a Democratic party or an independent public party, but I'm going to start the Children's Party. And I'll take in and everybody who want to make sure that children, not only in America, but around the world, have basic needs: a roof over their head, food to go in their stomachs, clean drinking water so that they will not die a death that doesn't need to be died, and that they have someone to say, "I love you," because love is a part of compassion that no human being can do without.
I also come from one of those traditions, one of those Christian traditions that says you're supposed to be Jesus-y in the world. And Part of the story of the Christian calendar is that Good Friday, when in the midst of the crucifixion, Jesus says, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing." And it's this root of compassion. It's this compassion for those who are offending. And so for us in our community, there is no way to give up or to speak about the way of being in the world that wouldn't involve compassion, but that involves empathy. And so many of us have been taught to start with sympathy, and that doesn't get you very far because that distances you from the person. So in our community, we know that we have to begin with empathy, and that is seeing it from the other person's perspective. And so whenever we hear someone in our community want to be a part of an effort, we ask them, do you know other people who are in that already? And so much like usually, we have a commitment to foster care and to that system. And in our family, my wife and I have adopted children from the foster care system. I just don't know that there's any better way to get kids out of the foster care system than to adopt them once they're in it. And so we brought them into our family. And I remember sitting at a training that you have to go through in the state of Minnesota to adopt through the foster care system. And a parent was there who has run a foster home for years. And he described what he does to show compassion to these children who are hurt. And every morning, they all take a shower, and he runs the towels through the dryer. And then he wraps them in a warm towel. And there is just no way to institutionally solve those problems. And you just can't fake that. And so we say to the people in our community, when they have a passion for an idea, do you know the people who are already wrapping someone in the towel? Because that's where you go first, is the place where it's happening. And we try to point the light and shine a light on the places where people are doing spectacular things. And it is happening all over. And I would be so thrilled if the media would get on it, but we all have friends and we all know people, and we don't need the media to tell the story. So if we start whispering the truth and pointing people and bringing them over and showing them what's going on in our own houses, there's some wonderful things going on in this world that can be told through a whisper and a towel.
A sister just referred to the fact that many congregations have moved away from having boards, imitating the corporate world, to having ministries, getting down and doing the dirty work and helping people. And I'm happy to report that our congregation many years ago started feeding people. In fact, I saw a man at one site, and he asked me what church I was from, and I told him. He said, I like what you folks are doing because you cook some good food. And it's out there every Saturday. Rain, shine, sleet, snow, fall, gray, a balmy day, the food is there. We also did rise to the occasion as best we could in this community for the tragedy that happened in Louisiana, Katrina, people victimized by Katrina. That's a long way from Seattle. But people in the Seattle area went down, chartered planes, took clothing and things to help feed the people, the homeless. And our church here has a house. People bring the stuff in our houses. We have more clothes we can't wear, pots and pans we're not using. A lot of things people can use, we are sitting on, and we can share it with others. We also are coming to grips with the criminal justice system. 1 out of every 4 black families in this nation is affected by the criminal justice system. In the state of Washington, African Americans comprise a little under 4% of the total population, but over 40% of everybody who is incarcerated. Does that make sense? If you can't say no, I'll say amen all by myself.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know,
As you have heard, I mean, all of us who are Christian seek to be inspired by the example of our Lord. How frequently in the Gospels do we hear, and Jesus had compassion. He saw a crowd, he had compassion and fed. He had compassion because he saw a leper and cleansed. He had compassion. His heart went out to them, and we try, we hope we can emulate this one who is the compassionate one. At home just now, we are being devastated by the HIV and AIDS pandemic, and quite often both parents die and the children are orphaned. And it's so deeply moving to see how people who didn't do anything about it in a village, for instance, you'd have a young mother get up early to go to a home where the household is headed up by a teenager, because both parents have died, and really work her butts off or some kind of thing on behalf of these children. And yeah, and you know, sometimes some of the hardest workers in that area are white people. Now I mention that because many of the victims have been people of color. And you might have thought that given where we come from, white would be saying, thank goodness that you have one less of them. And yet in that crazy country of ours, some of the most dedicated workers will be white people caring for black people. And yeah, you look on and you say, we really are crazy, but it's nice crazy.
Thank you. I had the bounty of being raised in a Baha'i family. And you asked the question, how central is compassion in the beliefs of each of our faiths? And I think for Baha'is, compassion is very much linked to the concept of unity. That Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, said, you're all the leaves of one tree and the fruits of one branch. And there is a connectedness between every part of that world tree that we must safeguard and that we must serve. And so it wasn't only a concept in my home. I remember we lived in a very segregated, fancy town. I won't say where, but it was in the United States. And it was sort of the nouveau riche kind of area. And when I went to school and it was lunchtime, there was a line right down the cafeteria. And on one side were the black kids, and on the other side were the white kids. But the Baha'i kids, which was me and my two brothers, refused to be dominated by that, so we sat wherever we wanted with our friends who were on both sides of the line. My parents lived that sense of unity and compassion. It was not just taught to us in words, it was in action, as Eleanor Roosevelt said. And so we would have the most amazing people at our table very often. And people stopping by from Africa, people stopping by from Ireland. We felt very much, because the Baha'i community was smaller in those days, was really a sense of one world family, and we still have that. But I have to tell you that I was so amazed when my own son was 4 years old, and I realized that somehow that sense of unity and responsibility and compassion, that he had received that somehow, that it had been awakened in him. Because, and I hope you'll forgive me for this, my PhD son now, but when he was 4 years old, he was quite a miser, and I worried about it. He would look for money everywhere, and he would put it in a little blue velvet bag that I'd given him, and he counted his money all the time. And if it was time to have ice cream, I'd say, you know, you have your own money, Chris. He would give up ice cream to hold on to this money. And he thought that more was better, so 5 pennies is even better than a dime. He just liked lots of money. He wanted to pile it up. Well, one day, I was watching a television program on, senior moment, but it's one of the international, I think it was a Christian program for helping children in Africa, one of those programs. And he walked into the room, and they were showing these children who were starving. And I went to turn it off. He says, "No, Mommy, I want to see." And we sat and watched together, and he said, "Where are they?" I said, "They're on the other side of the world." He said, "They're hungry." I said, "Yes." He went out of the room, he got his bag, and he said, "Mommy, can I send this money to those children?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Then send all of it, Mom." He was 4 years old, and he realized that he was responsible to take care of these children that he saw, because his heart was broken open with compassion. And it is a tradition, and I really believe, friends, that this is one of those unifying threads amongst all of us, that living in the example of the founders of our faiths is always about taking care of each other.
Yes, beloved family, in Islam, it's not quite the matter of a religion that holds the right of compassion. Almighty God, our Lord Creator, cherisher, nourisher, and sustainer of the whole universe, is by His nature the compassionate. And He created each and every one. In fact, every substance, every plant, every insect, every particle in this cosmic reality that we live today is in its nature compassionate. You are the manifestation of compassion. I am the manifestation of compassion. But we're just about to leave here and go. What are the challenges that we face? And what did we learn here? And what are we going to disseminate and propagate out of compassion? Is it compassion to speak about one's religion? Is it compassion is to talk about one's faith and conviction? No, compassion is the obligation of every human being in every nature of this world. Thank you. You do not need to be a Muslim to be compassionate. You do not need to be a Christian to be a compassionate person. You do not need to be a Sabian, a Buddhist, a Jew to be compassionate. You should get to know who you are and what is the purpose of being in this world. Are you in this world of yourself or by yourself, or there is a purpose by which God made you to have a father and mother? And soon you're going to be a father and mother too. Are you going to carry on the compassion that we all talk about? I heard the Honorable Archbishop Desmond Tutu talk about how his mother was so compassionate to him. I heard about how His Holiness talked about his mother being compassionate to him. But how many of us, the men, have been compassionate to our mothers? How many of us have been compassionate to every woman who extrapolates the dignity, the integrity, and the compassion of your mother? We learn. When I see the Archbishop Desmond Tutu, I feel honored and grateful to God that He has made this day possible, that I could meet him and to feel him. But I'm looking at him not by the picture that I see him today. He's been in the struggle ever since he was born. He was born to face pain. He was born to face challenges. He lives amongst the dead. And every day of his life, when he wakes up, he sees people around being killed every day by fellow human beings. Amongst them were Christians, amongst them were Jews, amongst them were Muslims, and all other religions. And maybe he was brought up from the traditional religion of Africa. But how compassionate are we to rectify the mistakes that we have done? I learned so much about compassion, not from all these scholars, not from all these very honorable, highly esteemed, blissful religious luminaries. I learned about compassion just yesterday when I saw multitudes of children who we, in our own inequity, have produced, and they came in so quietly. They showed compassion. They showed love, and they paid attention, and they got glued to the magnetic appearance of His Holiness. They were not discombobulated. They were not decompartmentalized. They were not hurtful. They didn't have no enemy. They came in, and everybody they saw was just part of them, and they were screaming. And I said to myself, this was what I used to be. But today I call myself a Muslim. I cannot sit with a Christian. I cannot sit with a Jew. I cannot sit with the Buddhist. How compassionate am I? We have a challenge. In order to really carry on the principles, the virtues of this compassion, message of seeds of compassion, is that are we ourselves the extrapolation, the manifestation of those seeds? And could we cultivate those seeds to bring about compassion in this world? This is very, very, very important. I am a white, but I was born in Africa. You have to see yourself also as a black, even though you look white. But we all came from one essence, one Father, one Mother, one God. So should we all be one people. God bless you.
I'm very proud to be an indigenous bishop in the Episcopal Church, because in our community, we do all of the compassionate acts that you would imagine a religious community should do. We reach out to people through Episcopal Relief and Development, to people who are victims of the Katrina hurricane and people who are in need of all descriptions and all kinds. And I'm extremely proud that someone like His Grace the Archbishop Desmond Tutu is a member of our worldwide church and is a great example of the type of compassion that we exhibit. But he exemplifies it in more ways than just our trying to reach out in kindness or charity. Charity is not necessarily compassion, not entirely. Brothers and sisters, listen carefully. Compassion has the word passion in it for me for a reason, because it means you have to be able to stick your neck out sometimes. Yeah. Compassion is directly connected to justice. In the Episcopal Church, we've stuck our neck out, not just to bandage up battered women, yes, we do that, but by empowering women to serve in the highest levels of authority in our church. We have stuck our neck out to talk about racism and about sexism. And we've stuck our neck way out in this world by saying it's time that we stop demonizing gay, lesbian, transgendered, and bi people. Now, we're not popular because of those things, and I'm not the most popular guy on the stage necessarily because I stand up and talk about these things. But an old Native tradition, a maxim in our culture says, sometimes you need less thunder in the mouth and more lightning in the hand. And that means that we need to act for justice. And as I will close, since I don't want to abuse your time and your privilege, you've given me to speak my piece, I want to say once again, whatever tradition you're from, if you want to join me in a compassionate act of justice to save Mother Earth, go to genesiscovenant.org and get to work in your own faith community to change the world with us. God bless you.
Uriah, you get the last word.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to say, for the church I attend, I feel the way they show compassion is by getting out in the community and not only helping themselves, but like helping people get back on their feet and talking to the homeless and finding ways to connect with like inmates and give opportunities to people who aren't as privileged as them. And yeah, I think getting out in the community is like one of the major things you can do to spread the word about compassion.
Thank you so much.